Hi. And there are a lot of you. Yesterday, I was in my backyard, and I just had this idea. I've got a 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old girl, and I took the 2-gallon watering can that we use to water the Christmas tree. It's like pretty big relative to her. And I just put it in the backyard next to the spigot. And I said, "Hey, Alice, come here. I want to show you something." And I showed her how to use the spigot, and I showed her how to hold the watering can. And for 3 hours, she ran around the backyard. Everything in the backyard has been watered 700 times. She had a great time with it. And I was just sitting there watching her, and I had this weird, kind of wonderful, kind of sacred experience. I thought, 4 years ago, she didn't exist. Like this person she was in my wife's womb. But if you go back 5 years, she really didn't exist. She had existed as some sort of like seventh order potentiality for us to have this particular child and out of a very unlikely combination of genes. And that's kind of what I feel right now, looking at you all. I'm like, there's like 100, how many people are here? 183 people here. And 8 years ago, you existed, but this kind of, this work, this harmony of souls, this collaboration didn't exist. Guideposts didn't exist. There was no guidepost name. There was no guidepost brand. There was no higher ground name. None of this existed. Not even really as an idea at this point. Anyway, none of this has anything to do with the talk. I was just sharing. So Maria, here's Maria as a grown-up. And it's a little bit weird to talk about adults and to have a conference so focused on adults because we're so used to thinking about children and our vision for children. And we know Maria Montessori best for her vision of childhood. This is my daughter, the aforementioned daughter. These are more or less random photos of her from her classroom at Guidepost Brushy Creek from the last few days. And she's doing things that are all very aligned with and expressions of this vision of childhood that we share. She's concentrating, she's harmonizing with others in a mixed stage classroom, she's challenging herself, she's meeting her own needs, she's working, she's focusing externally for prolonged periods, she's fighting distractions. You can't see her fighting distractions, but in fact, she is fighting distractions. The classroom is a busy place, and she's accomplishing all these things that are really interesting and challenging for her. So why is she doing all this, and why do we work so hard to inspire her and thousands of other children to do all of this? Why are we doing this? And there are two perspectives you can take on the why. One is you can look at childhood itself, and you can say, this is what a healthy, happy child looks like. And I think that that's true, and that's very important. Childhood is part of life. This is how Maria Montessori saw it. This is what healthy development looks like. And when this kind of thing doesn't happen, when there isn't concentrated work and real thinking that integrates different disciplines at the right ages, childhood starts to go off the rails. It starts to become a little bit pathological. It's certain kinds of problems and the seeds of vices start showing up. And this is what health looks like in childhood. But it's not just about childhood. Montessori spoke many times, though somewhat elliptically and mysteriously, about adults. What do we want people like Alice to grow up to be? Not like what job do we want them to have? Do we want them to be doctors or lawyers? But what kinds of people are we creating? And that is what animated Maria Montessori. So I'm just going to give you a sample quote that should shake you up in the right way. Education depends on a belief in the power of the child and on a certainty that the child has within himself the capacity to develop into a being that is far superior to us. Far superior to us. She talks like this all the time. She talks elsewhere about a new man. Man as in human, not adult male. Or about healthier children being the salvation of humanity. She really thinks that getting education right would change what human beings look like. So what the hell does this mean? What exactly did Montessori think that a superior adult would look like? And that's the question that I want to address in this talk. That's the question that we're going to explore in this conference, is we're going to align around a vision of what we're shooting for, not just in the look and feel in childhood, though also that, but what does that look like kind of throughout the life cycle? What is it that we're aiming to create? What kind of person are we aiming to create? What value are we offering to the parent who is thinking about helping their child grow up to be good and successful and happy? So what is this amazing type of adult human, this far superior being that Montessori education aims to nurture? Who is the Montessori adult? And I'm going to answer that question in my own words and not give Montessori's answer directly. And there are a few reasons for this, but one big one is that just Montessori didn't say a lot. So she says things like this a lot, and then you're like, what is the superior person? And she doesn't say that much. What she does say, she does kind of gesture at examples. Her two most common examples are saints. This is Saint Bridget. And great innovators or explorers. This is Galvani. She also mentions other kinds of people. Comenius, the educator who invented the visual textbook. Not infrequently, she just directs us to Jesus. I mean, she just kind of goes straight there. This is her Catholicism channeling through. She's like, yes, we know that perfect people can exist. Look at this divine being. He's a kind of model of what the new human being would look like. Well, what does that mean for any particular person? Not super clear. And there's a kind of modern version of this maneuver, too, when you say, what is the Montessori adult? You've probably heard this many times. If you haven't, you will if you work here. So we don't have saints anymore, or revolutionary science anymore, but we do have some fields with real innovation and excellence. This is Steph Curry, Taylor Swift, and Jeff Bezos. And what do all these people have in common? Success. That's true. Wild, unfathomable success. What else? Yeah, they're Montessori alumni. Somebody knew it. So all of these adults went to Montessori schools of some stripes as a child. Taylor Swift is the new addition to the pantheon. Steph Curry and Jeff Bezos are long-standing stalwarts. So they're all Montessori educated. I mean, this is the kind of thing that you hear Montessorians say and point to when it's like, what kind of adult do we create? And it's like, look at these great people that we create. And there's good reasons to do this. There's good reasons to gesture at saints and scientists too, very good reasons. I think extreme outliers of greatness are important. They're very important. I don't want to diminish or disparage them at all, and I want to make that point very clear at the outset. Era-defining heroes, really great, really successful people are to be revered. And I'm not going to talk about them for the rest of the talk. But that is true. And the reason why I'm not, and there's a but, and this is a big but, is that it's really important when we're thinking about the education that we provide and our vision for the adult, that we look beyond such people. That we look beyond such people. We're not just looking at era-dominating Six Sigma freaks of nature who are just so amazing that to look at them is to gaze upon the sun. We're looking at, so why not? So one is that great people always exist. Always. Like, great people existed before Montessori education. And part of what it is to be a great, exceptional person is to create your own character out of really crappy or mediocre inputs. And this is how you get the Frederick Douglasses of the world. And so when you're looking at really exceptional people, there's a way that it's kind of misleading from the perspective of education. But the second and more important reason is that great heroes are just not always that concretely relatable. Sorry, great heroes. No offense. But part of what we want to know is that what we're aiming for every student. For every student. Probably we do have some students in our schools that will be Bezos's or Swift's or St. Bridget's or Galvani's, but most of our students will not. Statistically speaking, most of our students will not. And that's fine. And we have something of value to offer them, and we have a vision for them. And the vision is not just kind of live your life and look up to these heroes. There's a specific vision for what a good normal life looks like, even if Montessori didn't say that much about it. She said a bit. The superior person? Who is the superior normal person? We all know who the exceptional people are. That's relatively uncontroversial. But who is the superior person who is normal? And that's what I want to talk about. Normal adults. Normal adults. And to start with, normal is a funny word. It has a few different meanings. There's normal as in commonplace, like the thing that usually happens, the kind of person that you usually see, like, I'm giving a talk with a PowerPoint. That's normal. That's what everybody does. That's just the usual thing. Then there's normal as in typical, which is related to, but we'll see it can be distinct from normal as in commonplace. You're a basketball player who just doesn't hit as many threes as Steph Curry. That's fine. You hit the normal amount of threes. You're average. You're typical. And then lastly, and most interestingly, there's normal as in healthy. Your doctor says, everything looks normal. You're like, yes, that's awesome. Like, that's a different sense of normal than everybody uses a PowerPoint. When your heart is functioning normally, this is often used in medical context. You can also use it in more casual contexts, like, no, like my girlfriend's not a weirdo, she's normal, like that kind of thing. Like she's healthy, she's grounded. But it's mostly in medical context, and this is what Montessori means when she says normalized. When she says normalized. So normalization is a term of art in Montessori. It's this kind of funny word that she uses, and it's one reason to kind of think about normalcy. She means normal as in healthy, as in medically healthy. She means healthy development and not pathological development. And I want to focus on really especially the last sense, but with a kind of special asterisk or footnote to the next to last sense. What does a normal, unextraordinarily, but healthy, superior, good life look like? Okay, so all of that was preamble. We're doing great. I want you to think of a normal person, normal as in healthy and as in unextraordinary. Unextraordinary, a healthy person, a normal, well-functioning person. And think of your own person. And then follow along with me. For a few minutes, I'm going to paint a sort of brief abstract picture of a normal person and what her life is like. You ready? Okay. This person is living her life. She has desires, she has dreams, and she faces challenges. She thinks about her challenges, and she still takes steps towards her dreams. She lives in a complex world. Sometimes she's right. She gets at the truth. She gets what she wants. Other times she's wrong. She falters. She messes up. Still other times she changes tack. She conceives of a new path, a new opportunity. Sometimes she sticks with her goals and pushes through. Sometimes she adjusts and pivots. Thought by honest thought, step by diligent step, she works to build a life for herself. And the life that she is building takes shape. It starts to actually be from nothing, like you guys, like my daughter. She directs her life to be the sort of life that she would like, that she wants, and she accumulates wins. She's really making progress. Of course, she also tallies losses. There are setbacks. There are injuries. The course of life is injurious, always. And some injuries are going to be self-inflicted. She's not immune from unexpected setbacks, but our normal person expected the unexpected. And that doesn't make everything okay, but it helps. It helps ameliorate the harm she cannot cure. she's open to life. And so her many experiences become knowledge, which becomes wisdom. She appreciates the world in which she builds her life. The world is full of wonder, most especially the other people who live in it. She finds it easy to be generous. She has projects. She has things that she does. She enjoys the exertion of putting her shoulder to the wheel, of doing good work. Long stretches of her life are characterized by good labor, intense projects, good routines where she's working on stuff. In other stretches of her life, she reflects, she connects, she gets perspective. She doesn't always work. Some seasons she sows, others she reaps. Her best seasons, her best times in life are a blur of these things: vocation, celebration of herself and her loved ones and her world. With her corner of the universe as pages, she authors her life. That's it. This person is normal. Normal in the senses that I talked about. She's normal in the sense of being healthy, good, well-functioning. She's very healthy and very good. She has an enviable life. She's built herself a great life. But she's also normal in being unextraordinary. As I described this person, somewhat abstractly, she could be great. She could be one of these era-defining freaks who are successful and awesome and everybody knows about and are famous. Everything that I said is compatible with that. But she could also be living a quiet life of steady work and gratifying intimacy. Nothing in this description requires outlier levels of success or fame or impact. And I chose paintings from two of the great painters at capturing and elevating the kind of unextraordinary, normal in this second sense, Bouguereau and Rockwell, Norman Rockwell, to emphasize this. Okay, so returning to our question, who is this amazing adult, this far superior person, this human that Montessori education aims to nurture? And I painted a picture, but let's analyze it a bit. Who is this person that I've described? What characterizes her? And I think, this is the kind of pattern that I've come to after about 10 years of thinking in education, is that there are four things, four virtues, four patterns, four deep character traits that the healthy person has and that education needs to inculcate. Four simple, normal virtues. One is knowledge. She loves knowledge. She learns, as I described this person. She is a learner. She has setbacks, she has challenges, she thinks her way through life. She thinks her way through life. She has a perspective on these things. She makes judgments. Does she stay the course? Does she pivot? Her experiences become knowledge, become wisdom. This is someone who is aware, who understands the things around her. She has a framework. The second is work, love of work. She has projects, she does stuff, she puts her shoulder to the wheel, she accumulates wins. She not just reaps, but sows. This is someone who is active, who is shaping her world, who puts effort into things. The third is agency, what Montessori calls independence. She decides what her life is about. She decides. That doesn't mean that she has to be some sort of grand rebel shaking off the shackles of her society's views as to what should be. She could be living a totally ordinary life in line with her society and what her parents wanted of her. But if she lives an ordinary life, she thought about it, and she decided, yeah, that sounds good. She conceives of and authors her life. She is resilient. She faces her challenges. And then the last point is humanism. Humanism, not humanism as in like she wrote letters during the Renaissance, but humanism like she loves people, she appreciates the human world. She loves herself, she builds the whole spectrum of connection and intimacy into her life. There's a lot of things that aren't on this list. Charity, piety, patriotism, social justice. I could go citizenship, I could go on and on. This is a pretty simple list. Do you learn and accumulate wisdom? Do you work? Do you do things? Do you love effort? Do you decide what your life is about? And do you love people and love the potential in people? That's it. That's it. These are sufficient. I should also say these virtues are our programmatic values. If you've never seen them before, they are part of the theory section of PMI training. There are guiding lanterns. They're a constant theme in my Friday notes. Rebecca will talk more about this. There's a lot of people who will talk about this over the course of the conference. I'm not going to say that much about it here. I'll say a little bit more. These things are very, very related to our pedagogy. Work, knowledge, agency, and humanism results in the child having their best shot at living the fullest life possible. So this normal person, I think, is the superior person, the new man, the fully realized human adult. And that might be a little bit surprising when somebody says, there's going to be a person that's superior to all of us. You might not have had in mind somebody who has a good work ethic and loves her family and is very intentional about things, and that's it. But that is it. That's actually pretty rare. It's pretty rare. You don't need to devote your life to charity. You don't need to be a scientific genius. You don't need to be the world's greatest pop singer ever or the world's greatest, I don't know, how would you describe Steph Curry, ballistic calculator for scoring three-pointers? You can be anything. A fully realized person can have any job. And this is a kind of sub-point, but it's helpful to stressing the normalcy of the normal. This is a very healthy, very good perspective on adulthood, but it's very accessible. Normal is very normal. You can be an artist. You can be a banker. Nothing says that being a banker or a health insurance broker or an engineer or working without pay or being a day laborer or being an employee or an operator is better than being an artist or a doctor or a scientist or getting paid or being a creative, being a member of the creative class, a term that I hate, which is now often associated with Montessori because of this Wall Street Journal op-ed from a million years ago. You don't have to be a CEO or a founder or a manager. The work that I have now, working to change education, is great. I love this work. The work that I had, my first ever job that I got a paycheck for was working in the back inventory section, like the warehouse of a Toys R Us. Do you guys know what Toys R Us is? It probably closed before. Okay, yeah. Toys R Us is like a big box toy store that was put out of business by the internet, basically. And I was back there assembling playgrounds and sorting boxes, and I was 15, and it was sweaty and difficult. It's good. This is a Montessori quote. All work is noble. All work is noble. The only ignoble thing is to live without working, in a very broad sense of working. There is a need to realize the value of work in all of its forms, whether manual or intellectual, to be called mate, to have a sympathetic understanding of all forms of activity. She's here talking about teenagers. She thinks that adolescents should be exposed to her specific vision was they should work on a farm, and somebody does plants the seeds, and somebody waters them, and somebody else keeps the accounting, and somebody else takes them to market and sells them. And you all work together, and you get a sense that all of this work is good and valuable. The activist, the founder, the poet, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, it all counts. To be a far superior human being, you don't need a specific kind of job. And this is one of the blocks, I think, is denigrating certain kinds of work. Think shepherdess. This is Bouguereau's shepherdess. She's I don't know, she looks to me like she's 19, but probably Bouguereau meant her to be 14. But she's tending her flock. Good work. for a good life. A couple other points. The normal person is happy. Really, actually happy. If that wasn't obvious, if that didn't jump off the page from how I described her, I'm just going to emphasize it now. That doesn't mean that their life is all bubbly and everything is great. There are periods of joy, there are periods of pain. There are times of camaraderie, there are times of loneliness. When you're going it alone and it's just so hard, there are ups and there are downs. But underneath all of this, there are those patterns of you're learning, you're deciding what you want in life. You're in the driver's seat, you're working towards it. You can still, even in your darkest moments, see the goodness in human beings. And that helps you stay grounded, that helps you learn, that helps you become happier and maintain your happiness. It's like a cruise control for happiness. Like you get too sad, it kind of bumps you up. And the normal person is also successful, which isn't guaranteed in life, but it is important. Success does matter, which is why competence matters. We spend so much time educating children to be able to do stuff. The normal person is quite capable, quite capable. The average person is very, very capable. It's easy to underestimate. There's a kind of like, oh, the average person is like, 100 IQ normie who works an email job and doesn't accomplish anything. That is not my view. The average person does a lot in their life. So success matters, but it's success on your terms. It's success on your terms. It's not the nagging voice in my head from my college counselor and my parents told me that I should be an investment banker or a lawyer, and now I've succeeded. It's you've decided what you want, and you actually get it. And there are a lot of apparent, success does not mean that you're doing well. It's a necessary but not sufficient condition. There are a lot of apparently successful people who are miserable or teetering on misery. And the normal person is the opposite. They're anti-fragile. Even when they're not successful, they're always happy or on the cusp of happiness. They're working towards success. One more footnote. The normal person, humanism, this kind of value of humanism of loving other people and seeking connection. Montessori talks a lot about independence. The normal person is independent. That's what agency means. She's in the driver's seat, but she is also interdependent. And it's not a balance. It's not like she's independent on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and interdependent on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's always both, and they don't actually conflict. So she authors her life, owns her heartaches, forges her own way, relies on her own judgment, and has friends, family, acquaintances. She collaborates, she leans on others, she celebrates interpersonally, she's aware of the broader world. She engages in the economy and civilization and trades with millions of people and billions of people, some of whom live thousands of miles away. All of that is good. Agency, independence, how Montessori meant it, is not opposed to others. It's opposed to unhealthy dependency. That's the contrast. To involuntary relationships that you can't influence and direct, that you feel stuck in, that you feel passive with respect to. So there's so much more to say for this normal person. Everything for her is intentional, it's thoughtful, she's thinking her way through life. Knowledge for her is a perspective. It's not just book smarts, it's book smarts, but it's also the street smarts of her life. She is self-authoring, she has a literal narrative for her life. She's determining what's meaningful. I already said the thing about piety and patriotism and social justice and charity and politics. The normal person does often have causes, but she doesn't have to. This is just one of those things that you decide upon, like your job. You can have zero causes, it's fine. You're not sinning against normalization if you don't have political causes. Anyway, I'm just elaborating on the idea. What I really want is for the basic picture to be clear-ish, hazy, clear. This person is normal. She's healthy, she's unextraordinary, at least possibly unextraordinary. What she is not is commonplace. Remember that first sense of normal isn't typical, like everybody uses PowerPoint? Most people you meet are not normal, how I've described them. I mean, even at the basic level of you have goals and you pursue them and you overcome challenges and you decide whether or not to, like these are extraordinary things in the sense of they can be quite rare, especially consistently. Like you might have it in one domain of life but not another. And part of the reason is that just to kind of describe it further, these virtues, knowledge, work, agency, humanism, they're simple, they're achievable, but they're not, none of the virtues are that common to see really consistently. It's common to see, including in my own life and people around me that I love and adore. So this is not listing a list of Montessori sins. This is just describing how hard life is. What about when action doesn't yield a bank of wins? You try and you're just not building up successes. Or you're getting lots of experiences. Everybody gets experiences, but you're not really learning from them. You're making the same mistakes. Or you're learning the wrong lessons. It's easy to learn the wrong lessons. The right lessons do not jump off the page in life. You have great ideas, and you're thinking things through, and you know what you want to do in life, but you don't actually do it. Intelligence doesn't automatically connect with discipline. We get derailed, but do we pivot and regroup? Do we decide what we do when we get derailed? Or sometimes do we just substitute and cope and wallow? It's a healthy and an unhealthy way to deal with everything. Sometimes we find wonder in the world. Other times our benevolence mixes with cynicism. Really seeing these things through consistently in a human soul is rare. But normal people do exist. They do exist. So again, why don't we see more of them? Why isn't it more common? This is an attainable ideal. It's an attainable ideal. All it means is that you have work you value, that you are competently thoughtful, that you are intentional about everything important, and that you relate to yourself and others positively. That's all it means, but it's also uncommon. So why isn't it more common? There's a lot of answers that I could give, but can you guess the answer that I'm going to give? Yeah, I mean, so humanism, like a real benevolence about human beings, the dominant emotions that people have towards human society right now are something more akin to fear, guilt, anger, than like a really general love. And I'll talk more about that in a second. I think the reason why the normal isn't normal, these kind of attainable ideals that make people happy and make lives go well and that everybody should want to get, is school. It's not the only reason, but it's a very fundamental reason. School, parenting, the ways we nurture children or fail to nurture children. And so I'm going to be very hard on schools for a few minutes. You could probably get me to walk back or moderate my view, but I think it's helpful to just kind of see it in the purest form of critique. I was a college professor for a while before I got into Montessori education. And where I was a grad student and then where I was a professor were very good universities. Like the kind of universities and colleges where you get the top 1% of students across the country, very bright students. And they weren't that good. They weren't that good. I mean, they were good in the sense of they were good at school. Oh man, they were good at school. They would come to your seminars on philosophy or whatever, and you would sit down, ready to discuss everything about the meaning of life and to dig deep and to do disciplinary college level work, and they would be really good at asking, is this going to be on the test? That is the kinds of students that our schools produce. And I think if you kind of go through the list of what I call the normal, simple virtues, normalcy versus what is typically inculcated in school, one by one, putting it a little bit dramatically, you should get a love of work, a love of effort, a love of doing things. Students in school work, and typical schools work, but they don't love it. You learn to work the system and get the rewards and avoid the punishments. What you learn is a kind of happy compliance, and you're not really setting the terms for your own education. Maybe you'll pick a class periodically, an elective when you're in high school or college, but through most of education, you are having your goals set by others. They're goals that you don't understand, and you're working towards them in this highly structured way where you're kind of like churning through worksheets and tests and going through a curriculum. You're not really learning to love effort. You're learning to be compliant. And then when that structure goes away, you often see people being like, what do I do? Should I go back home to live with my parents? What do I do? Love of knowledge, love of truth. School should give you like a sense that you can know the world. The world is knowable. You got to put in the work. You got to think about it. You got to argue. You got to get competing perspectives. You got to look at the evidence. You might be wrong. You've got to update. But man, is it worth it? The truth is out there, and you can get to it. And that is not really what schools inculcate. What they actually inculcate is kind of like two competing things. One is, I think pretty much everybody at school at this point learns how to kind of like BS in a seminar. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like you're like discussing The Great Gatsby in the 9th grade or whatever, or 10th grade. And like what is the meaning of green? And everybody has an opinion, and you go around a circle, and nobody really knows what the book is about, and the teacher isn't saying anything, and everybody's kind of nodding along, and there's one smarmy student, probably me, who's like taking up all the oxygen in the room. You get this kind of, like, it's good to like spin opinions, but they're not really, it's not really grounded in a like search for the truth. It's very rare in this kind of seminar that you hear a teacher say like, nope, that's not right. Look at the text. But like if you never say that's not right, not that you have to say that exactly, but if students don't have the sense that they can be wrong, you get a love of opinion. You get a love of opinion. And then from a competing perspective, you can also get a love of not the truth, but being right. Being on the right side or the perceived right side, or kind of winning a debate with your classmates. I'm just gonna skip forward. Love of human beings. So we already got a comment on this humanism. What a good education will do is orient you to the good in humanity, not shy away from the horrors at all. So the point is not to whitewash humanity and tell a rah-rah Whig history. But the point is there is something about orienting a child step by step to what we have accomplished, to what humans are capable of, and to really centering their hearts on that fact. What you see, I already mentioned this, but what you see in, I think especially teenagers, is an overwhelming amount of anxiety, not even so much about their own lives, though that exists too, but about the world. There's so much kind of catastrophism and apocalypticism, I don't know what to call it, doomerism, on all political sides, and it comes up in many, many disciplines, and it comes up in school all the time. And then add to that schools are often not the happiest place to be. I wouldn't say that I was bullied in school, that would be overstating it. But I did not learn in school. My school experience did not teach me people will protect my interests, and people are to be trusted, and people like me, and people have my interests at heart. School taught me I should be defensive and avoid other people, and nobody has my back. Agency, self-possession, the confidence to decide what your life is about, to drive things forward, this inner flame that we fanned. That's what school should give you, and it should give you that by giving you the opportunity to make lots of choices and to do lots of real things, increasingly complex things that you decide on and that you own and that you follow through on and you self-direct and you make the mistakes and you correct it. And what schools in fact give you is self-doubt. Not so much because schools say, you suck. If anything, they do the opposite. They give everybody participation trophies. But more because they don't do what I just said. You don't really have the opportunity in school to do things yourself, and so you never earn the confidence that you need to get through life, to be a normal, virtuous person. So the normal, as in typical, like the common college student, I think, is a mix of the empowering left side and the crippling right side. So I said I would overstate the case. I think that almost everybody gets a mixture of these things in school, but it's not good to get a mixture. It's bad. It's bad to get a mixture. This is why it's a big reason why people end up mixed rather than just purely unconflictedly on the right track. So I'm going to share with you one of my favorite Montessori passages. It's from this book, From Childhood to Adolescence. This is one of the places that she talks at length about older children and adolescents. And in the very last appendix to the book, she even talks about university students, which is great for people like me who are like, what do you think about adults? University students are pretty close to adults. And she mostly laments the current state of university students in a similar manner that I just did. She thinks that university students, college students, incoming college students have been totally misprepared by their schooling experiences. They've been set up to be depressed, alienated incompetents, not because they suck. There's nothing inherently wrong with them, but because they have had the wrong kind of moral education. They have not had the right kind of moral education, the kind that would make you normal as in healthy. So here's the passage. The inert child, so this is the common student who is going through school all the way through high school and about to enter university. The inert child who never worked with his hands, who never had the feeling of being useful or capable of effort, who never found by experience that to live means living socially and that to think and create means to make use of a harmony of souls. This type of ordinary child who has been through ordinary schools will become pessimistic and melancholy. He will seek on the surface of vanity the compensation for a lost paradise. And then he goes to college. And thus a blessed man, he will appear at the gates of the university and to ask for what? So university is a time when you're supposed to be, you're learning the stuff that you're going to do in life, that you're starting to specialize, you're starting to look out into the world and think about your future, and your studies change. And to ask for what? To ask for a profession that will render him capable of making his home in a society in which he is a stranger and which is indifferent to him. He will enter into a society to take part in the functioning of a civilization for which he lacks all feeling. It's the abnormal adult. Common, but unhealthy. So if school is the problem, if the reason why we don't look out into the world and see a bunch of healthy, happy people, can school be the solution? Can we make our normal person not just healthy, normal as in healthy, but normal as in commonplace? And this is a big question. Can we make a person virtuous in an old sense? Can we make them happy and good? I'm going to skip some slides. I'm just going to say, yes, we can. Can we make a person happy and good with school? Yes. And this is a kind of crazy thing to say, that school can make a person normal and happy and good and healthy. And I think that the key is that you first have to know what happy and good looks like. And people disagree about this. When you say what counts as, maybe some of you disagreed with what I said. That's fine. It's something to think through. When you say what is the look and feel of a healthy adult life, you have to know what you're shooting for, and it has to be right enough that you could design for it. And I think that this is what Montessori identified. Montessori's greatest insight was identifying what normalization looks like in children and glimpsing what it looks like in adults. It doesn't mean great like Achilles. It doesn't mean innovative like Steve Jobs. It doesn't mean fearless like Douglas. It means something simpler and more accessible. It can mean those things, but it means something simpler and more accessible. It means you live your life as you conceive it fully. It means you can value, and you can value people. And that's it. And once you see this perspective and what it looks like, you can design for it. You can build schools around it, you can build programs around it, you can think, what does it look like to have a classroom in which there's work, in which there's knowledge, in which there's agency, in which there's humanism? What does this look like for an infant, for a 3-year-old, for a 6-year-old, for a 9-year-old, for a 12-year-old, for a high school student? But to design for it, you have to be able to see where you're going. And that's what I hope I've given you in this talk. This is a famous Washington quote: let us raise a standard to which the wise and honest can repair. Not a crazy standard, an accessible standard that good people can all achieve, a standard of normalcy. And my purpose is just to help you understand, what is this it? What is this standard? We have to be incredibly clear on this, or the magic is lost. Montessori said at the end of her life, she lamented what slipped. She was thinking about her influence. What have I accomplished in the world, me, Maria Montessori? By this point, her influence was vast. Many schools had picked up her curricular patterns and designs, and there were children's-sized furniture everywhere, which didn't exist before her. So she had a lot of influence. But she said what slipped down to most schools was a freer way of studying and giving individual objective tasks. The miracle was officially forgotten. And what was the miracle? This vision of health, normalization. Normalized people as in healthy, as in good, normalized moral character, made normal as an ordinary, achievable by anyone, and made normal as in commonplace by school. And I think that's what we need. That's why the title of my talk is A New Normal. I've run all the way up to the end of my talk time, so Joel, you can decide whether or not there's Q&A, but that's it. Thanks.